on some things in our lifetime. And some things, if we don't see payoff in our lifetime, it doesn't mean it was wasted effort. Want to give the next slide? I put this in here because I like it, basically. But I thought it was interesting that Albert Schweitzer already got mentioned this morning. Until he extends the circle of compassion to all living creatures, man himself will not find peace. And I think, you know, piggybacking a little bit on some of what was said this morning, until we can resonate within ourselves, within humanity, within the larger world around us, including the environment, including animals, we're a little bit in trouble, if not a lot of it. And so many of these things come from, they start from this process within, of doing what we can to continue a lifetime of healing within, which enables us to have more to give out. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this next thing, and I'm going to kind of breeze through a couple things, and then I'm going to be done here soon. But I was thinking of, I kind of had 4 components of things that seem very under-recognized to me toward a more peaceful world and connected to the ways we need healing. Certainly one is recognizing and transforming the violence that is within us, and we all have it. Even if we don't act it out, we have the components of violence within us. So continuing that inner work. But the next thing is our tendency to chronically demonize others. The whole concept of other. Carl Wilkins, who was the only United States citizen that remained in Rwanda during the genocide. He was there as a missionary, and everyone else was evacuated out. He was the only US person that stayed because he thought he could help. And he talks time and time again about one of the components of genocide being the willingness to see the other. Trauma tends to encourage creating stereotypes, because when we're traumatized and we're not healed, part of the defensive mechanism of survival puts people into stereotyped categories. It's to save us, but it's not a way of life, and it needs to heal so that we can open back up and once again feel part of humanity. So under stress and trauma, we're actually more likely to otherize, more likely to demonize, to stereotype. I think we need to recognize more that there are certain situations in this world that if most anyone was in that situation, there's high risk that they would choose violent actions. That there are some things that would just be too much for almost anyone. And we've got to begin taking those on differently and better. And again, I would reference Rwanda just as a quick example, that most of the people that committed atrocities in Rwanda were not lifetime killers. You know, there were plenty of people that were neighbors, had lived peaceably together, were farmers, and under the right circumstances, they became genocidal killers. We can't fail to recognize that under the right circumstances, that might be us. The 4th one is, and this is something I tend to harp on over and over, often. Trauma in this world is a silent epidemic that we are grossly ignoring. We can't talk about traumatized individuals anymore. We have to talk about traumatized societies. We have to talk about mass epidemics. We need to talk about global trauma. And prioritizing methods of healing for mass numbers of people needs to be a much higher priority as part of the big picture. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds, and it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being, and who is willing to destroy a piece of his own heart? I mean, so often in today's world, we look at the bad guys and we think if only we kill them off, we will all be better. And yet if we recognize that within us all, we have the potential for good, we have the potential for ill, and we all wrestle with these choices. And we can't afford to take for granted how much we have here. That makes it much easier to be nonviolent. I saw a quote that was cited from being in a rabbinic text. In the places where there are no human beings, be one. In ending, I want to read a poem called Kindness. Some of you may be familiar with it. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted and carefully saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride thinking the bus will never stop. The passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you. How he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak to it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to mail letters and purchase bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. Thank you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Questions?
I've heard this twice today, compassion fatigue. What are the symptoms? Well, I know what the symptoms are, but how does it manifest? Compassion fatigue.
I think compassion fatigue comes from dealing with too many situations without really dealing with the situations. So there's a culmination of really being in denial, perhaps, about how intensely difficult and emotional the situations we're dealing with is. This is something that professionals deal with. This is something we can get from being an activist. You know, this is something we can get from just living in the world today because we're bombarded. So I think compassion fatigue really pertains to a lot more of us than we recognize, because we get deadened down because there's too much. And a lot of it's horrifying. And we don't have good skills within the culture to deal with that which is horrifying. So we tend to kind of shut down because it gets deadening if you don't deal with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So how do we combat compassion fatigue?
I think dealing with compassion fatigue, one thing is take more breaks. Seriously, right? Because part of the deadening comes because we have natural processes to like deal with things and calm down. Deal with things and calm down. And we tend to get stuck because we go, 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 go. And the body doesn't get to calm down. We really have very good natural mechanisms. We just screw it up. But another thing is to allow your own process in whatever way you need it. And that means I really believe that for people that want to deal with very deep issues in the world, better be prepared to cry when they need to. Because every time we hold back, you know, if we expect to go through hearing about atrocities,